The dust motes danced in the late March sunlight as Xavier Parker stood in the middle of his penthouse, surveying the winter's accumulation of neglect with a critical eye. As the CEO of Parker Pharmaceuticals, he excelled at running a billion-dollar company, but failed miserably at keeping his personal life in order, especially his living space. "Sir, I've scheduled sunshine cleaning services for tomorrow morning at 9. His assistant's voice came through the speaker on his phone. "They're highly recommended and can handle the deep spring cleaning you requested." "Perfect, thank you, Marissa," Xavier replied, running a hand through his dark hair. At 35, he had built an empire from a small family business, but domestic matters remained his kryptonite. His cleaning service had quit 2 months ago, and between the winter holidays and their biggest product launch to date, he hadn't had time to find a replacement. "Just remember you have that virtual board meeting at 11, Marissa reminded him. "I'll be ready," Xavier assured her, ending the call and taking one more look around his 4,000-square-foot disaster zone. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. Stella Andrews woke before her alarm, as she did most mornings. At 29, she had built sunshine cleaning services from the ground up over the last 5 years. What started as a way to pay bills while pursuing her art had become a thriving small business with 15 employees. She took pride in maintaining high standards, especially for high-profile clients. She scrolled through the day's schedule while sipping her coffee. The newest client was Xavier Parker, a name she recognized immediately. Parker Pharmaceuticals had been in the news frequently for their groundbreaking research in rare disease treatments. Their offices were just downtown, but this job was at Mr. Parker's personal residence. "High-profile client today," Stella mentioned to her best friend and operations manager, Natalie, as they loaded supplies into the company van. "The CEO of Parker Pharmaceuticals." "Ooh, fancy," Natalie teased. "Are you taking this one yourself, of course?" "New clients get the boss treatment," Stella replied, though in reality, she still took many jobs personally. Despite growing the company, she loved the satisfaction of transforming a space. "Just be careful with those rich CEO types," Natalie warned. "Remember that tech guy who tried to hire you away from your own company?" Stella laughed. "I doubt lightning strikes twice. Besides, I'm sure Mr. Parker will be at his office while we work." The Parker penthouse was in one of the most exclusive buildings downtown, with a doorman who checked Stella's credentials thoroughly before directing her to the private elevator. As she rode up to the top floor, she mentally prepared for what she might find. Executive residences often fell into 2 categories: barely lived in showcases or chaotic disaster zones reflecting their owners' busy lives. When the elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse foyer, Stella was met with a breathtaking view of floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, and a man who definitely wasn't at his office as she'd expected. Xavier Parker turned at the sound of the elevator, his expression one of mild surprise that quickly transformed into something harder to read. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed casually in jeans and a Henley that did little to conceal his athletic build. His dark hair was slightly tousled, and his sharp jawline was covered with a day's stubble. "Good morning," he said, extending his hand. "Xavier Parker." Stella shifted her cleaning caddy to her left hand and returned the handshake. His palm was warm, his grip firm but not overpowering. "Stella Andrews, owner of Sunshine Cleaning Services. I didn't expect you to be home." "I work from home on Wednesdays when possible," he explained, leading her further into the apartment. "I have a meeting in a couple hours, but I'll stay out of your way." As he walked her through the space, pointing out areas that needed special attention, Stella tried to maintain her professional demeanor. But it was difficult not to notice how his eyes crinkled slightly when he smiled, or how he seemed genuinely apologetic about the state of his kitchen. "I'm afraid I'm not the most domestic person," Xavier admitted, gesturing to dishes piled in the sink. "The previous service quit rather suddenly, and I've been swamped with work." No judgment here, Stella assured him. That's why we exist. Now, if you could show me where you keep your cleaning supplies. I'm not actually sure what I have, he confessed, looking slightly embarrassed. The previous service brought their own, Stella smiled. Not a problem. We bring everything we need for the first visit, then make recommendations about what you should keep on hand. After completing the tour, Stella brought in her team 2 other cleaners who would help tackle the large penthouse. She assigned tasks and areas, keeping the main living areas for herself. There was something about Xavier Parker that piqued her curiosity, and she found herself wanting to understand the man behind the corporate success stories. As she cleaned, she couldn't help noticing the details that told his story. The bookshelves held medical texts alongside well-worn science fiction novels. Family photos showed a younger Xavier with what appeared to be parents and a sister. Despite the overall disarray, his home office was meticulously organized with dual monitors, neatly arranged files, and a planner open on the desk. When she approached to dust the office, Xavier glanced up from his computer. "Sorry, am I in your way? I can relocate." "It's fine if you're comfortable," Stella replied. "I just need to dust and vacuum." "Actually, I could use a break before my meeting," he said, standing up. "Can I get you some water or coffee?" The offer caught Stella off guard. Most clients either disappeared or treated her and her team as if they were invisible. "Water would be great, thank you." In the kitchen, Xavier filled 2 glasses from a filtered dispenser in the refrigerator door. "So, how long have you owned your business?" he asked, handing her a glass. 5 years now, Stella replied, taking a sip. "Started with just me and a bucket of supplies, now we're up to 15 employees." Xavier's eyebrows rose. "Impressive growth. What made you decide to start a cleaning business?" "Honestly, it was supposed to be temporary," Stella admitted. "I studied fine arts in college, thought I'd be a professional artist, but I needed steady income and cleaning gave me flexible hours to paint. Then I started getting more clients than I could handle alone, hired help, and suddenly I had a real business on my hands." "Do you still paint?" Xavier asked, seeming genuinely interested. "When I can find the time," Stella said with a small laugh. "The irony of success is that it leaves less time for what you originally wanted to do," Xavier nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I know that feeling well. I started in research, was going to develop medications, not run a company, but life had other plans." The timer on Stella's phone buzzed, breaking the moment. "I should get back to work," she said, setting down her glass. "Thank you for the water." "Of course," Xavier said, looking almost disappointed that their conversation was ending. "I'll get back to my emails." As Stella continued cleaning, she found herself glancing occasionally toward the office. There was something disarming about Xavier Parker. Despite his wealth and position, he seemed down to earth, lacking the pretension she'd encountered with other wealthy clients. When his video conference began, she could hear his voice transform into something more commanding as he led the board meeting. It was a glimpse into another side of him, confident, decisive, clearly in control. She tried not to eavesdrop, but couldn't help admiring his ability to redirect conversations and clearly explain complex medical concepts. After 3 hours, the penthouse was transformed. Surfaces gleamed, floors shone, and the air smelled fresh. Xavier emerged from his office looking impressed. "This is incredible," he said, surveying the living room. "I'd forgotten what this place looks like clean." Stella couldn't help feeling proud. "This is what we do. Though I should warn you, the first cleaning is always the most intensive. Regular maintenance makes it much easier." "About that," Xavier said, "I'd like to set up a regular schedule. Weekly would be ideal if that's possible." "Of course," Stella replied, pulling out her tablet to check the schedule. "We can do Wednesdays same time if that works for you." "Perfect," Xavier agreed, then added somewhat hesitantly, "Would you be the one coming?" The question surprised her. "I usually handle initial cleanings, but then assign regular clients to my staff." Was it her imagination, or did he look disappointed? "I understand you must be busy running things," he said, but I'd prefer consistency, and you already know the layout now. Stella hesitated. She didn't typically maintain client homes herself anymore, but something about Xavier made her want to make an exception. I could handle it personally for the first month to establish a routine. After that, we can reevaluate. His smile was unexpectedly warm. That would be great, thank you. As she left the penthouse that day, Stella told herself that her decision was purely professional. Xavier Parker was an important client whose business could lead to referrals in his social circle. But deep down, she knew there was more to it. There was something intriguing about him, a complexity beneath his successful exterior that made her want to know more. Over the following weeks, Stella found herself looking forward to Wednesdays. Xavier was always home, claiming to work remotely, though she suspected he might be arranging his schedule specifically to be there when she arrived. Their conversations grew longer and more personal. She learned about his parents, both doctors who had instilled in him a passion for helping others through medicine. He listened intently when she described her art, showing genuine interest in her creative process. "You should show me your work sometime," Xavier said one Wednesday in April as she wiped down his kitchen counters. "Oh, I don't know," Stella demurred. "It's been so long since I've had a proper showing." "That doesn't mean it's not worth seeing," he countered. "I mean, if you're comfortable sharing it." Stella found herself pulling out her phone and showing him photos of her recent paintings, abstract landscapes, inspired by the emotional resonance of places she'd visited. She never showed clients her art, yet here she was, heart beating faster as Xavier studied each image with genuine attention. "These are extraordinary," he said finally, looking up with admiration in his eyes. "You have real talent, Stella." The way he said her name made something flutter in her chest. "Thank you," she replied softly. Their eyes held for a moment longer than necessary, and Stella felt a shift in the atmosphere between them. This was dangerous territory. He was her client after all. She cleared her throat and returned to cleaning, trying to re-establish professional boundaries. But the following week, Xavier was waiting with coffee made exactly how she liked it, with a splash of oat milk and a touch of cinnamon, remembering her preference from a casual conversation weeks earlier. The thoughtfulness of the gesture touched her deeply. "I have to go to Chicago next week," he mentioned as they shared coffee. "Pharmaceutical conference. I'll leave a key with the doorman so your team can still come." "I'll make sure everything's taken care of," Stella assured him, ignoring the surprising disappointment she felt at the thought of not seeing him. "I'll miss our Wednesday conversations," Xavier said, his voice casual but his eyes serious. Stella tried to maintain her professional composure. "It's just 1 week. I'm sure you'll be too busy networking to notice." "That's where you're wrong," he replied with a small smile. "These talks have become the highlight of my week." The admission hung in the air between them, neither willing to acknowledge what it might mean. Stella left that day feeling confused about the boundaries that were increasingly blurring between them. When Xavier returned from Chicago, something had changed. He seemed more determined, more focused when he looked at her. The following Wednesday, he was waiting with not just coffee, but lunch from her favorite local sandwich shop, something she'd mentioned once in passing. "You remembered," she said, surprised at the thoughtful gesture. "I remember everything you tell me," Xavier replied simply. They ate together at his dining table, the cleaning supplies temporarily forgotten as they discussed his conference and her week. It felt natural, comfortable, and entirely inappropriate for a client-provider relationship. "Stella," Xavier said finally, setting down his napkin with determination. "I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest." Her heart raced. "Of course." "Am I imagining this connection between us?" he asked directly. "Because if I am, I'll never mention it again, but if I'm not." He trailed off, leaving the possibility hanging between them. Stella took a deep breath. "You're not imagining it," she admitted. "But Xavier, you're my client. There are professional boundaries, then I'll find another cleaning service," he interrupted. "Problem solved." She laughed despite herself, It's not that simple, why not? He challenged. I'm attracted to you, Stella, not just physically, though there's certainly that too. His eyes traveled briefly over her face in a way that made her cheeks warm. I'm attracted to your mind, your ambition, the way you've built something from nothing. I want to know you beyond these Wednesday conversations. Stella felt herself wavering. There was no company policy against dating former clients, but the thought of losing the account made her business sense kick in. Your contract with Sunshine is valuable. Not as valuable as the possibility of us, Xavier countered. But if it makes you feel better, we can maintain the professional relationship while exploring a personal one. Different days, different contexts. That sounds complicated, Stella said. Xavier's expression softened. Life is complicated, but some complications are worth navigating. After much discussion, they reached a compromise. Sunshine Cleaning would continue servicing Xavier's penthouse, but Stella would assign another team leader. Meanwhile, Xavier would take Stella to dinner that weekend, a proper date, unrelated to their professional connection. Their first date was at a small Italian restaurant far from Xavier's usual haunts. I wanted somewhere we could talk without interruption, he explained as they were seated in a quiet corner booth. Without the context of her cleaning routine and his home office, Stella worried there might be awkwardness between them. Instead, conversation flowed even more freely. They discussed their childhoods, their dreams, their fears. Xavier spoke about the pressure of running a company that developed medications people's lives depended on. Stella shared her struggle balancing business success with artistic fulfillment. You know, Xavier said as they shared a tiramisu, I have these walls in my home office that are completely blank. I've never found the right art for them. Stella raised an eyebrow. Are you angling for one of my paintings, Mr. Parker? Maybe, he admitted with a grin. Or maybe I'm suggesting you need a dedicated studio space where you can create again. The penthouse has that sunroom I barely use. Are you offering me your sunroom as a studio? Stella asked, surprised by the generous offer. Just thinking out loud, Xavier said, though his expression suggested he'd given it considerable thought. I have the space. You have the talent. Seems like a mutually beneficial arrangement. By the end of the evening, Stella knew this was more than casual attraction. There was an ease between them, a sense of rightness she'd never experienced before. When Xavier walked her to her door and kissed her goodnight, the spark she'd felt in their conversations ignited into something more powerful. Their relationship developed quickly after that. Weekend dates turned into weeknight dinners. Xavier attended the small art show Stella organized with pieces she created in his sunroom, which had indeed become her studio. He stood proudly beside her as collectors and gallery owners praised her work, never once mentioning his own considerable achievements. You didn't tell anyone who you are, Stella observed as they left the gallery that night. Tonight wasn't about me, Xavier replied simply. It was about celebrating you. As spring turned to summer, Stella found herself spending more nights at Xavier's penthouse than her own apartment. Her clothes gradually migrated to his closet, her favorite foods appeared in his refrigerator, and her presence transformed his once sterile home into something warm and lived in. There were challenges, of course. Xavier's position meant occasional late nights and business trips. Stella's growing company demanded her attention, especially as she began to focus more on her art again. They learned to navigate their busy schedules, finding ways to prioritize their relationship without sacrificing their individual passions. You know, Xavier said one evening as they sat on his balcony watching the sunset, before I met you, this place never felt like home. It was just somewhere I slept between workdays. Stella leaned against his shoulder. And now? Now it's where I can't wait to return, he said, kissing the top of her head. Because you're here. As their 6-month anniversary approached, Xavier grew mysteriously busy with what he claimed was a major company project. Stella was too occupied with a commission for a local hospital to question his late nights, assuming they were work-related. On the evening of their anniversary, Xavier asked Stella to meet him at the penthouse at 7. When she arrived, the space was transformed. Candles illuminated a path from the elevator to the balcony, where a table was set for an intimate dinner with the city lights sparkling below. "What's all this?" Stella asked, taking in the elaborate setup. Xavier appeared in a suit she'd never seen before, looking more handsome than ever. "Happy anniversary," he said, taking her hands in his. The dinner was exquisite, catered by the chef from their favorite restaurant. They reminisced about their first meeting, laughing at how Stella had expected him to be absent that day. "Best scheduling conflict of my life," Xavier said, raising his glass in a toast. After dinner, Xavier led Stella to the sunroom that had become her studio. In the center stood an easel draped with a cloth. "I have something for you," he said, removing the cloth to reveal a stunning new professional-grade easel with a complete set of top-quality paints and brushes. "Xavier, this is too much," Stella breathed, running her fingers over the smooth wood. "That's not all," he said, pulling an envelope from his pocket. "I bought the vacant space on the ground floor of my building. It gets amazing natural light and has enough room for both a gallery and studio." Stella stared at him. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I believe in your talent," Xavier explained. "This could be your gallery, your studio, a place to create and showcase your work without having to choose between your art and your business." Tears filled Stella's eyes. No one had ever supported her dreams so completely. "I don't know what to say." "There's more," Xavier said, suddenly looking nervous. He reached into his pocket again and knelt down on one knee. "Stella Andrews, you came into my life to clean my home, but you've done so much more. You've brought color and warmth to every corner of my existence. I can't imagine my life without you in it." He opened a small velvet box, revealing a stunning emerald-cut diamond ring. "Will you marry me?" Stella's hand flew to her mouth. "Are you sure? We've only known each other 6 months." "I've never been more certain of anything," Xavier said firmly. "When you know, and I knew from that first Wednesday when you showed me your paintings. I love you, Stella. I want to build a life with you." Through tears of joy, Stella nodded. Yes, I'll marry you." Xavier slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood to pull her into his arms. Their kiss was a promise, sealed with the certainty that what had begun as a simple business arrangement had blossomed into something neither of them had expected to find. 1 year later, they stood in the gallery that had once been an empty space, now filled with Stella's artwork and supporters from both their worlds. The sign above the door read, "Sunshine Gallery," a nod to the business that had brought them together. Sunshine Cleaning Services continued to thrive under Natalie's management, while Stella divided her time between creating art and overseeing the company's direction. Xavier had restructured Parker Pharmaceuticals to allow him more time away from the office, prioritizing his life with Stella while still leading the company's important work. "Did you ever imagine this would be your life?" Natalie asked Stella as they stood watching Xavier charm a potential collector across the room. "Never," Stella admitted, twisting her wedding band thoughtfully. "I went to his penthouse expecting to clean it and leave. Instead, I found my future." Xavier caught her eye across the room and smiled that same warm smile that had first made her heart skip a beat. He excused himself from his conversation and made his way to her side, slipping his arm around her waist. "Happy?" he asked softly. Stella leaned into him, feeling the steadiness and strength that had become her foundation. "Completely." In the quiet moment amid the bustling gallery opening, they shared a private look of acknowledgement for the surprising journey that had brought them together, for the unexpected love that had blossomed from the most ordinary of beginnings, and for the beautiful life they were building, one day at a time. What had started as a spring cleaning had given them both so much more than a spotless home. It had given them each other, proving that sometimes the most extraordinary connections happen in the most ordinary circumstances, and that love, like art, can transform empty spaces into something beautiful and meaningful. As the evening wound down and they walked hand in hand back to what was now their penthouse home, Stella thought about the serendipity of it all. Had she not taken that particular client herself, had Xavier not been home that Wednesday morning, their paths might never have crossed. "What are you thinking about?" Xavier asked as they rode the elevator up. Stella smiled, squeezing his hand. "Just that sometimes the best things in life come when you're simply doing your job, not looking for anything special." "And sometimes," Xavier replied, pulling her close, "the woman who comes to clean your home ends up cleaning out all the emptiness in your life instead." The elevator doors opened to their home, no longer just a place where a busy CEO collapsed at the end of long days, but a warm, art-filled sanctuary they had created together. A home in the truest sense of the word, built on a foundation stronger than either of them could have constructed alone.